So a lot of you guys have commented on my CNC laser content that I'm really good at showing you what can be made with a CNC laser, but I haven't done such a good job of showing you how to make stuff with a CNC laser. And you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a heavily DIY based channel. And so I think it's about time I give you guys a tutorial. So I'm gonna show you guys today my step-by-step workflow, how I create custom pick guards and humbucker rings and electronics cavity covers, truss rod covers, all that stuff. And I'm gonna be doing it with the Longer Ray5 20 watt diode laser. And I appreciate Longer for sponsoring this video and making it possible for you guys. And so I'm gonna show you start to finish how I design and cut out a custom pickguard, for example. So I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars, let's get started. Now, I'm really excited to tell you guys more about the Longer Ray5 kind of as we go through this tutorial video. But just one thing that I want to state right off the bat, because you guys have commented about it. A lot of you guys have commented that you want to get into CNC machines, but you just don't have the space. And as someone who has lived and traveled in a motorhome the last 3 years, believe me when I say I empathize with you, okay? I know what it's like to not have enough space for stuff like this. But those of you who have been following my channel, you know something very near and dear to my heart is that you don't allow your circumstances to define what you're capable of. And so that kind of brings us to this laser, because this laser is a very compact laser. Now, you guys know that I like really big CNC machines, really big lasers, because I love the idea of engraving an entire guitar body or even cutting out an entire acoustic guitar body, as you guys saw me do recently. It's very exciting. But I understand the need to keep things compact. And the truth is, the vast majority of what I use my CNC lasers for, I don't need that big of a CNC machine. In fact, the majority of what I do are what I already mentioned I'm going to show you how to do in this video: pick guards, truss rod covers, stuff like that. And so I'm excited to show you guys the Longer Ray5. I mean, this thing you can pick up and hang on your wall, okay, and it'd be completely out of your way. Your work table, you can fold up and set aside, or you can pull this thing down and just set it up on your coffee table or kitchen table near an open window with a little fan to blow the smoke out. You know, don't let your circumstances define what you're capable of. If you want to get into CNC technology, you can, and there are compact options for it. So now let's jump over to my computer screen where I'm going to show you guys how I make and design pick guards. All right, this is my first computer tutorial that I've done, so bear with me. I'm going to try to do this as smooth as possible. I am using a Mac laptop, which means no mouse, just trackpad. And so I know this is probably gonna be different for PC users, but I'm sure you'll figure out the differences. I'm using LightBurn software. So firstly, we're gonna find a PDF of the pick guard that we want to use. And I usually just search for free pick guard template. Terrapin Guitars usually comes up number 1. They have like every pick guard you can imagine on here, just as downloadable PDFs. So for the sake of this video, we're just going to do a standard Telecaster style pick guard. So we got that there. I'm going to go ahead and download it. You can see over here in the corner, we have our check for scale. It's a 1-inch square box. So we just want to make sure that when we are tracing out this design that we scale it properly. So that's downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and open up LightBurn here. And I'm intentionally skipping a step here because I want to show you why that step is important. But this is what I just downloaded right here. And you see how it didn't import everything? That's because we have to do something else to it first. And so what I'm going to do now is actually, I'm going to open that PDF. I'm going to open it with Preview, which is Mac's native PDF viewer and editor. And I'm just going to go ahead and just not do anything to it. I'm just going to export it. And when I export it, it still is a PDF, but this quartz filter thing, I'm going to change to create generic PDFX3 document. And I don't know why that's necessary, but once I do that, we'll go ahead and replace it. Once I do that, then it allows it to import properly. So now we'll go ahead and drag it in, and now we can see our whole Telecaster image is right there. So what we want to do now is we're going to check this scale. So we'll just make a square using the square tool up here. And I'm trying to get better at millimeters. So I tried to do everything in millimeters because CNC technology is all based on millimeters, not the standard system. So I know that 25.4 millimeters is an inch. You can see I unlocked this little lock up here. That way I can make sure it is perfectly square and not a rectangle. I'll go ahead and lock that in right there. And so this is now our inch square. So we're going to compare that to this inch square. And zoom in, I just scroll with my fingers on the trackpad, and wherever I put the mouse cursor, that's where I zoom in or zoom out from. So if I want to zoom in on something specific, I put my cursor on it, and I'll zoom right in. That actually looks perfect. If it didn't look perfect, what I would want to do is highlight all of this stuff, and then I can scale it until this square right here matches this square right here. And so, but since it already matches, I'm just going to undo that, and we're good to go. So now, we don't need these anymore. We have our image that's properly scaled. And so I'm going to show you kind of 3 methods of how you can do this. The first one is the quick and dirty method. It's definitely the fastest method to do this, but it's very limiting. But if you need to make just one pick guard and you don't need to modify it, and you just need it done quickly, this is the way to do it. So just highlight it, and you're gonna go up to Edit and hit Convert to Cut, and there you go. So now we can drag the image out of the way, and you can see this is the image right here, and this here is our line. That means we're gonna cut it. So now, assuming you just set up your cut settings, and I'm using a 20-watt laser, so that's 500 millimeters a minute at 85% power, and I probably could go a little bit faster and a little bit stronger because I don't think it's gonna be a very long cut. The preview says it's going to be a 10-minute cut. So I could run my laser at 100% for 10 minutes without damaging it. As best practice, I try not to run it at more than 85% most of the time. So, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys when I zoom in, the way LightBurn converts to cut, it makes it all horizontal lines. Now, these horizontal lines are close enough together that the kerf blends them together. But that's, for some reason, that's how it will debug and convert it to a cut from an image. But I don't recommend it because it has to work a whole lot harder when you're cutting out this way. And just to show you what I mean, I cut out an SG Classic pickguard using this method earlier, and you can just see how much harder the machine has to work. It, is kind of jittering back and forth to make all those horizontal lines all the way across. And then, the final cut, while it's a clean cut, it does look a little bit pixelated once you zoom in on it. And so, that's something that you can knock down with, 1 or 2 passes with a medium grit sandpaper. So it's really no big deal. So like I said, this is the fastest and easiest way to get your pick guard on your CNC laser cutting out. The problem is you can't edit this thing at all. There's no way to change out, your pickup layout or your shape of your pick guard or anything like that. So we're not going to do that method. We're going to go back to our image, and I'm going to show you guys how to trace it out so that it can be edited. Now, I realize you have actually yet to see this thing cut yet, but I just want to show you a couple of features about it that I really love. Firstly, like the Aether laser that I love so much, I love that this laser has a shroud surrounding the laser beam to protect your eyes. And so it's surrounded on all sides, and there is a little viewing window on the very front. And that viewing window is really cool. It actually filters out all the blue light from the laser, so you can't actually even see the laser beam. Very nice, which makes it very safe on your eyes and for other people that might be passing through the room when you're operating this thing. Another feature that I really like about it is that it has this really awesome onboard computer so that you can run it offline, essentially, standalone by itself. Now, in the past, I've mentioned that those aren't features that I would typically use because I usually am just doing like one-off custom work most of the time. And so I don't mind having my computer connected, but this is the first machine where I'm actually going to be tempted to use those features because inside the touchscreen menus, I can actually home the machine. I can jog it around using, X and Y axis. I can frame a project and of course run G-code that I've saved to an SD card. And so this is the most usable offline controller of all of the lasers that I've reviewed up until this point. And like I said, I am tempted to use it for things that I'm going to be printing off repeatedly, like pick guards, for example. This would be a really handy machine that I could just run it without tying up my other computer if I want to do some more design work while it's running. Now this takes a bit more time, but once you get good at it, it actually goes pretty fast. Remember that it was about a 10-minute cut using the convert to cut method. This is going to be a lot more efficient to the laser. So we're going to use our pencil tool up here, and we're just going to start tracing the lines out. And basically, anytime there's a concave or convex curve, we're just going to do like a shortcut across it. And I'm just clicking to create a point every time I do this. And we're going to zoom in here because there's like a little bit of a concave right there before it gets convex. So we'll go ahead and put one there. And I'm just zooming in and out as I do this. So up here. And so same thing here. This is, you know, concave, concave. And then right around here is where it kind of converts to convex. And it does that all the way down here to this corner. And your contact points right now don't need to be perfect. We'll go back and correct those. And that's one giant concave as well. So we'll just go right through it, point right there, point right there, point right there. And again, I'm just kind of rushing through this. And so I'll probably actually just cut to where I have all my contact points so you don't have to watch me do every single one of these. All the way to there. Okay, and once you do your last one, it should release the line tool, and that tells you that you have a connecting line, and that's very important. So that's good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click this little icon right here with the little dots in the shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to highlight each and every one of these just to make sure they're exactly where I want them. Like this one is a little bit off, so I'm going to move it in. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the output off on my image so that I can see my lines better. And then once you highlight it, you can just use the arrow keys. And if you hold down Command or Control, then you can do a more fine adjustment. And I'm just going to put them smack in the middle of that line. That one looks good. This one, yeah, it looks pretty good. This way. So again, I'm just going to, I don't know, fast forward or jump through this so you don't have to see me correct every single one of them. All right, and back to the beginning there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to make all those curves, and it's extremely easy. Again, we're using the same tool right here, and what you do is you just literally grab in the middle of it and drag it out. And you drag it out till it matches, and you can be as OCD about this as you want to, and I am pretty OCD, so I like them to be perfect. You can see these two little lines appeared. So if you select one of those dots, then you can, again, use your arrow keys to get them perfect, and if you hold Command, you get more fine adjustment. So again, I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I'm going to get these about perfect. And it takes, you know, a while to get used to understanding how these little lines manipulate their curve, but once you get it, it pretty much clicks and it's really fast. So again, we'll go over here, we'll do the same thing, just drag it out. If it doesn't come out perfect, just highlight it. And basically, if you don't want it to have a sharp point, you really want your lines to kind of be in line with the next line. So this next line is straight and this next line is straight. So making those straight is going to help a smoother transition. So that looks pretty good. This, I'm actually going to go like that. Pull it up here. Something like that. Zoom in. That looks pretty good. I like that. Okay, so now we got this big one. And with the big ones, especially like this where it's not a perfect convex, you still grab it in the middle and then drag it, and then I usually drag it down to its lowest point, and I try to get the majority of the curve correct. So you can see right here it's all correct, and then this one I'll just edit so that the whole line's correct. So we'll jump up here to the next one. And so this is where, again, if you want to smooth out any sharp edges, like going through this, you're going to want this blue line to be in line with this blue line. So I'm going to go like that to kind of even it out. And you can see it pulled the line out a little bit there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this back, and then I'm going to edit this one to kind of keep that curve. So there, we're good on that. So that's a nice, you see how this is a nice straight line? That's going to make a nice smooth transition through there. So same thing, grab in the middle of the line and then pull it up kind of to the deepest point to get this line in check. We'll zoom in, and you see how these lines are not in perfect line? We want them to be in perfect line. So I'm going to highlight it and Command arrow. Actually, I'm not going to Command arrow because I can do some bigger adjustments with just a normal arrow. And that actually looks pretty good. Again, right here, start in the middle. Pull it right here-ish. So that one's going to need to be a lot longer. And this one needs to be a lot shorter, actually. So something like that. And you can see how these naturally want to be really straight, but I'm gonna go ahead and move this one out a little bit. There, now we're straight, and that's gonna be a nice smooth connection there. Okay, and so the rest of these I'm gonna go ahead and just fast forward through, and you can kind of just watch me do it in fast forward. But this gives you an idea. It is kind of a tedious task, honestly, but well worth the investment. So that gives us our outline. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit that tool just for the regular pointer tool and have a look and see if there's any funny looking curves on here that need to be straightened out. And I did a pretty good job, again, of making all those blue lines all in a perfect straight line. So none of these like transitions from convex to concave look pointed or weird. And this, it all just looks really good. That took me a total of 8 minutes. So now we're going to add the pickguard screw holes. And I've done this before, so I know that a pickguard screw hole is about 3 millimeters. And so we'll go ahead and move that circle into the right shape, go back to our pointer tool, and we're just going to copy and paste this. And to get it perfectly in the right spot, you just zoom way in, put your cursor in the middle, and paste it. And if it's a little off center, again, hold Command and use your arrow to put it where it's supposed to go. So zoom out, zoom way in, cursor in the middle, paste, correct. Zoom way out, zoom way in, cursor in the middle, paste. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through this. All right, so now we got all our screw holes in the pick guard, and the last thing we're going to do is do our pickup cavity. So what I recommend, anytime you're doing a pickup cavity or a control cavity, you know, for switches or knobs or whatever, I always recommend doing it on a different layer. So I'm going to jump over to red. First, I'll grab my square tool, because that's what we're going to use first. I'm going to click on red for a new layer, and we're going to zoom in here, and I'm just going to make a square right here, about the size of the pickup. Doesn't have to be perfect, because I'm going to go back to my pointer tool, and we'll line it up perfect here. And height-wise, looks good. I'll just stretch it up a little bit. And then we're not quite centered, so line up that half, and then I'll squeeze this in right here. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then we're gonna round the edges, and so we're gonna add this radius tool down here, and 2 millimeter radius is a bit too small. Let's try 5 mil radius. That's not large enough, so we'll go up to 8. How about that? That looks perfect. Nope, not perfect. If it doesn't let you do a radius on your next corner, then it's too big. So we'll go ahead and back that down to 7. There we go. 7 mil radius is perfect for that. Easy peasy, right? And then we're going to use our circle tool, and we'll do some 3 mil circles right here. And those are already 3 mil. So I'll just go ahead and put that in the exact right spot. Use the pointer tool, copy, paste it over here on the other side. There we go. So why did I put the pickup layout on a separate layer? Very simple. Now this is easily editable. Let's say if I wanted to do a P90 or a humbucker in the neck position, I can turn that output off. Actually, first thing, let's go ahead and add a center line, because that's going to make this a lot easier. And we'll just do like a orange for the center line. A nice center line there, which we can just turn the output off so we don't accidentally select it or whatever. But now we got our center line. So if I wanted to do a humbucker in here, firstly, let's go ahead and save this since we worked so hard on it. We'll call it Telly Pickguard 1. Whoops. All right, so what I can do is I can open up another pickguard that I was working on. Like, let's say, the SG Classic that I just made. We'll open that up, and you can see I've got humbuckers on here. I can select one of those humbuckers, copy, go back to the one I was working on, paste that sucker right on there, and now we have a humbucker Telecaster pickguard, right? So anytime I want to laser off one of these, I can choose if I want a humbucker there or if I want the single coil there. Easy, you know, let's say I wanted 3 singles, or if I wanted 2 P90s or whatever, you can do that. And so I also want to show you guys, so let's make sure these layers are set up to cut properly with our 500 millimeters a second at 85% power. Now remember, with our quick and dirty method, this was a 10-minute cut. Let's see how long it's going to take with the traced method. 2 minutes. Okay, so that tells you how much more efficient it is to use this. So if you're gonna print off multiples, well worth your time to spend 8 to 10 minutes tracing out your design. And then what's really great is we can also customize the shape, for example. Like let's say you don't want this upper horn, you've got some really beautiful wood grain on your body that you want to show off, so you don't want to cover the whole thing with a pickguard. You can go back here, and there are tools in here where you can kind of edit and manipulate your shape. So for example, if I select a shape, I can hit D and it will delete that point. Now it's more like a James Tyler type pickguard where that upper horn would be allowed to show, you know? So that makes it really easy for you to customize things down the road, pick up layouts, control layouts, and then the overall shape of the pickguard while not having to worry about messing up your neck pocket, for example. And you can manipulate your shape around that without messing everything up. Some of you at this point might be like, wow, that was way too much work, way too tedious. I don't want to do that. So then the third is the easiest way, but not the most cost-effective way, is that you can just buy pre-made files. Actually, a really good place where you can get these, and shameless plug for my channel, I'm actually going to be selling these pickguard files as complete LightBurn files with your cut settings exactly where they should be. So you can buy the pickguards individually, or you can buy a complete pickguard pack, kind of all the common pickguards. And I'm gonna also put in, the files where you can change them from a single to a humbucker or whatever else. And they'll be full LightBurn files that you can, change and edit and do whatever you want to with, right? But that was a whole lot of talking. Let's cut out some of these pickguards on the laser. And this is just 3mm plywood that I get from Home Depot in big 4x8 sheets for like 20 bucks a sheet. And I just cut them down to a size that can fit on my laser. And then I just hold it in place using these little tiny craft grade neodymium magnets. And that's why I like using a honeycomb that's steel, so I can use magnets on it to hold my material in place. It's very helpful. So now I'm gonna go ahead and use the frame feature in LightBurn just to see where I'm cutting. And as you can see, I'm not centered on my material. That's why the framing feature is so helpful. So I'm gonna move up here, and now let's have another look. All right, that's good. Let's just double check with my gauge here. I'm gonna lower this laser down a tad. There we go. And you can see just how much faster and more efficient the cutting is when you take the time to trace it all out, as opposed to doing that quick convert to cut debug that LightBurn has built in. I understand why LightBurn software has to do it that way, but I think that's something that maybe they could work on in the future, is doing a more efficient convert to cut. That would be really helpful. All right. Let's see how clean this thing cut. All right. Nice and clean cut. Beautiful. Let's compare it to an actual Telecaster pickguard. Those dimensions are pretty spot on. If you look at the pickup placement, the neck cutout, the ashtray cutout, the control layout, that's all perfectly spot on. So that's gonna work wonderful. Now I mentioned earlier that this longer Ray5 is a much more compact CNC laser than what I've already reviewed on the channel. And as such, it does have a smaller workspace, okay? Most of the lasers about this size that I've reviewed have had at least a 400 by 400 millimeter work area, and this one is a 375 by 375. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, if you're doing smaller projects, you don't need a massive CNC machine. And so I like that it can just sit on top of my folding workbench and not take up any room, and I can hang it up on the wall when I'm not using it. However, the design of this machine is so incredibly simple that you could very, very easily upgrade. Firstly, the Y-axis. All it would take is a couple longer aluminum extrusions and a couple longer belts, and then just update your settings in LightBurn, and you could double or triple the length of this CNC machine really cheap. And it's something that I actually might do down the road, and so let me know in the comments if you want to see some DIY CNC upgrades because there is no extension kit available for this, but I can understand why, because it's so cheap and easy for you to do yourself. So it's a really good platform to start with, and then you can upgrade down the road if your circumstances change and you can have a bigger CNC machine. I should also mention too that this is the 20 watt model, and it is not cheap, okay? These 20 watt diode lasers, you do have to spend, $800-900 to get into the market, but they do sell a version of the longer Ray5 with a 10 watt laser that comes in at less than $500. So if budget is an issue, you can start with the 10 watt laser, which is more than sufficient to cut through, like for example, the 3mm plywood that we've been cutting today, as well as, various colors of acrylic. What I'm saying is you can get in on the cheap, and then you can upgrade to the 20 watt laser module when you feel like you've outgrown the 10 watt laser module. I personally prefer the 20 watt, but that's because I'm actually using these things, for lack of a better word, commercially. I'm running these machines often, and time is money. So if you are looking to do like a side hustle, if you are buying one of these things with the idea that it's going to be a moneymaker, I do recommend, if you can afford it, just go straight for the 20 watt. It's going to save you money in the long run. And like I said, you can extend it to a bigger work area down the road if you feel like you need it. Okay, now that I've cut out this pick guard and I've verified that it is the right scale and all the things are in all the right places, I'm actually going to make a custom pick guard for a client. And that's another way that you can make money with these things. Obviously, you can sell just the regular pick guards. What gets me more excited is making custom stuff. So if you're not interested in getting a CNC laser, then it doesn't help to be able to buy the files from me. And so I'm just going to offer to make them for you. So that's an option on my website. Again, I'll put a link down in the description if you're interested in it. But what I'm doing here is there's a client that really wanted this pick guard that I put on a Telecaster that I built for my aunt not too long ago. And they really wanted this shape, but I actually cut out this shape by hand. All right, so I can turn that image off, and I can cut this out, and that is going to take a whopping minute and 42 seconds. So let's cut it out. Now I will say, if you do want to order a custom pickguard like this from me, it does need to start out at least as a normal pickguard so that I can properly line up the neck pocket with the pickup cavities. But after that, it can be fully customization. So you could say, I want a Telecaster with a humbucker and I want it to be this shape, and you can just doodle up a shape. But then I know, because it's a Telecaster, that I can start with this, then I can replace it with a humbucker, change the shape. Or maybe you want an Ibanez gem, but instead of it being HSH, you want it to be 3 Filtertrons. And instead of it being a 5-way blade switch, you want it to be 3 on-off switches. Like, I can do that, but it needs to start out as an Ibanez gem so I can properly align the neck pocket and anything else. That would be the one caveat, is I don't want you just sending me a doodle on a bar napkin and saying, make this pickguard, because it'll be impossible for me to get the proportions right and line everything up properly. So you just got to start with something that's normal, and then I'm happy to make it for you. Again, there's a link in the description where you can make that purchase if you want. Now, 2 more things that I absolutely love about the longer Ray5 specifically, and these are significant improvements in design over any other laser that I've reviewed this far. And those are, 1, the location of the NEMA 17 stepper motors. We have one out here on the side of the Y-axis, and then the X-axis is mounted on top of the X-axis gantry, up out of the way, where it's not going to knock into my clamps or magnets that are holding down my material. That's a real pain point that I've had with some of these machines that look a little bit more sleek because they've encased those NEMA 17 motors into the frames. But as that X-axis and Y-axis move around, I've had issues with those motors bumping into my clamps and knocking my materials loose. And so I love the way they designed this to have those up and out of the way. If the laser's not going to run into it, the motors are not going to run into it, and I absolutely love that. The other thing that I love is how much travel is available on the Z-axis gantry. For example, I can set it nice and low to cut out 3mm plywood like we have been throughout this video. I can also, without changing the position of the machine or installing any riser legs or anything, I can pull the Z-axis up and fit an entire guitar body down to engrave a serial number or a design or something on. I've never been able to do that with a CNC machine up until this point. I've always, at the very least, had to remove the honeycomb grid to get some extra depth, and I've always had to boost the machine up or install some riser legs or something. And so again, I just really appreciate all the design and engineering that went into this little tiny beast of a machine. So if this video was helpful for you to show you how easy it is to design and make stuff with a CNC laser and you're ready to take the plunge, I do have links down in the description for where you can pick up one of these longer Ray5s, as well as where you can buy my LightBurn files for the pickguards that I showed you in this video. So be sure to check those out. I'm Dan, this is Guns Guitars, and I'll see you in that next video.